Secret photos of previously unknown rooms under the Great Sphinx of Egypt reveal explosive details. The existence of hidden tunnels has now been confirmed beyond doubt. This discovery could change our view of the ancient monument forever. The new photos provide another archaeological sensation from the world's largest stone sculpture and add another piece to the puzzle of what the building complex in Giza really was. In a statement, the Egyptian government has acknowledged that there are cavities beneath the Sphinx whose origin, function, and true extent will surprise you. The Great Sphinx of Giza is definitely one of the most famous monuments of ancient Egypt. For thousands of years, it has stood on the eastern edge of the Giza Pyramid Plateau. Not far from the pyramids of Cheops, Chephren, and Mycerinus, the structure, which is approximately 73 meters long, 19 meters wide, and almost 20 meters high, has always been considered an integral part of the complex. But what if that's not true, and the world's largest sculpture, carved from a single piece of stone, wasn't built by the Egyptians at all? The construction method differs greatly from that of the neighboring pyramids. The body was carved directly from the limestone of the Giza Plateau, while the pyramids were built stone by stone. To this day, the different layers of rock in the natural rock formation are visible. The upper part of the Sphinx consists of harder types of limestone, while the lower part consists of softer layers that are more susceptible to erosion. The head of the Sphinx is proportionately smaller than the body and wears the famous Nemes headdress. Since the royal attribute can also be seen on countless reliefs of Egyptian rulers, researchers automatically assume that the Sphinx was of Egyptian origin. An alternative explanation could be that the Egyptians only copied the impressive headdress from the imposing lion figure, and that the Sphinx is much older than the entire known Egyptian civilization. Originally, the entire surface of the enigmatic sculpture was covered with a fine limestone cladding, and the Sphinx was probably even painted in color. Traces of red pigmentation in the facial area indicate that the monument may once have been a bright red lion-like complex. For a long time, its date of origin was thought to be the 4th dynasty of the Old Kingdom. That would be around 2558 to 2532 BC, during the reign of Pharaoh Chephren, who was also supposedly responsible for the construction of the pyramid named after him. However, doubts about these dates are slowly emerging. The Sphinx could be much older and may not be a sculpture at all, but rather have a mysterious, functional character. The mysterious passages and tunnels beneath the Sphinx. Mysterious entrances to the Sphinx have been puzzling people for decades, and they are the reason for heated debates about the true purpose of the Sphinx. In the 1970s, renowned Egyptian archaeologist Zahi Hawass and his colleague Mark Lehner discovered and investigated a previously undocumented shaft located to the left of the Sphinx tail. Contemporary witnesses report that a worker remembered the existence of this passageway, whereupon a single stone blocking the entrance was removed. The exposed passage led down into the limestone subsoil directly beneath the Sphinx. Hawass and Lehner say they spent about 3 weeks exploring the shaft and the adjacent cavities. Their official conclusion later was that there was nothing hidden there. The findings were summarized in a 16-page report, which, however, contained only a few photos, and many of them show only the outside of the Sphinx and not the inside. It is striking that to date, very few images of the tunnel itself have been published, and there are no photographs showing the entire course or possible end of the passage. Photos from inside the Sphinx must exist from this period, and dozens of researchers have already requested access to the data. But efforts such as these are always rejected by the Egyptian Antiquities Authority. Zahi Hawass is now the most powerful, but not necessarily the wisest, archaeologist in Egypt. He must know where the photos are and what they show. However, in recent decades, Hawass has been more notable for obstructing other researchers, secrecy, and angry outbursts. The entire area around the Sphinx is heavily secured, and critics accuse the authorities of withholding important archaeological information from the public through their restrictive access policy. Permits for new research cost several $1,000s and are only granted in exceptional cases. Official representatives counter that all investigations have been comprehensively documented and that, since no further archaeologically relevant finds have been made, research on the Sphinx can be considered complete. Outraged scientists describe such statements as pure madness, and many questions remain unanswered. Why are there no complete visual records of the passage beneath the Sphinx? Why was the tunnel closed again after the investigation? And why are the passages and rooms often not mentioned at all in popular depictions of the Sphinx? Illegal photos prove this is what the Sphinx looks like inside. The combination of limited access, incomplete documentation, and conflicting expectations between official archaeology and alternative research traditions was reason enough for two adventurers to simply circumvent the prohibitions and venture inside the Sphinx on their own. The images are incredible. The photos take the viewer into an area that has been inaccessible to the public for decades. All of the images were taken from a low, dusty, and cramped passageway, making it clear that the photographer was indeed inside the structure. Some of the images show roughly hewn walls that did not match the smooth limestone blocks of the outer shell, but rather give the impression of an original core or of a cavity that was expanded at a later date. The light falls diagonally from a flashlight or small camera unit, making every unevenness in the stone stand out vividly. Some researchers who have examined the photographs suspect that the surface of the tunnel walls show signs of workmanship that cannot be attributed solely to ancient tools, possibly traces of modern restoration work or extensions. It is also noteworthy that the images do not show a clear end to the passage. Instead, the view becomes blurred in the darkness or is abruptly blocked by wooden boards that apparently serve as a barrier. This raises questions. Is this purely a security measure to prevent unauthorized entry, or are certain areas deliberately being kept hidden? From an archaeological point of view, such boards could simply be part of a conservation strategy to prevent access to unstable sections. Critical minds, on the other hand, see this as a deliberate attempt to conceal hidden chambers or artifacts. The fact that only a few images of the interior of the Sphinx have ever been made public, and that these new images were taken anonymously and illegally, reinforces the suspicion that something is being concealed here. Since the images emerged, experts around the world have been debating whether the photos show an officially documented area that has simply not been made to the public, or whether they actually depict a previously unknown section. In any case, these explosive images prove that the interior of the Sphinx is far more complex than ordinary visitors could guess from the outside, and that the Sphinx was most likely more than just a pretty monument. A mysterious wall inside. It sounds like pure magic. The report of two adventurers from the late 19th century describes rooms inside the monument and a strange wall. Old photos of the Sphinx clearly show that there was a large entrance on the back, which is now covered with concrete. This opening looked like a recessed hatch, and according to eyewitness accounts, led to a vertical shaft that extended into deeper areas or a kind of cavity beneath the Sphinx. Below the ears of the Sphinx, near the transition from head to neck, there are also said to have been entrances or recesses. Some of these openings are said to have been used by researchers or workers in the early 20th century to penetrate cavities inside the head. Whether these were authentic ancient entrances or inspection shafts added later during British or Egyptian restoration work is a matter of debate among experts. The fact is, however, that certain close-ups from that period show darker areas that appear to be entrances and are no longer present today, or at least no longer accessible. Some Egyptologists suspect that these entrances were sealed either for safety reasons, to protect the structure from further damage, or because they led to unstable areas. Somewhere between scientific caution and speculative theories, important facts may be hidden. The fact that more and more of these potential access points have disappeared over time adds further fuel to the debate. The report by the men who allegedly explored the interior of the Sphinx in the late 19th century tells of rooms, tunnels, and chambers. Allegedly, these two men found a kind of wall inside that seemed out of this world. The wall was not made of anything material, but rather was like a veil of an indescribable smoke-like substance. Despite its nebulous structure, it was impossible to penetrate the wall. When the two men approached, they were reportedly held back by an invisible force. Unbelievable! The Sphinx stood on a green meadow. Imagine the Sphinx not in the middle of the dry desert, but on a green meadow surrounded by trees with watercourses winding through the Giza Plateau. Sounds absurd? Geologically speaking, it is entirely conceivable. The so-called water erosion theory of geologists such as Robert Schoch suggests that the Sphinx was exposed to heavy rain over thousands of years, which would only have been possible in a significantly more humid climate. This would mean that the Sphinx is much older than official history claims. The fact is, the Sphinx is over 70 meters long, around 20 meters high, and carved from a single limestone massif. It depicts a lion's body with a human head. The face is said to represent a pharaoh, but it has never been proven which one. The traditional view of the pyramids of Giza is also slowly crumbling. No mummies were found in the main chambers, nor were there any clear inscriptions identifying them as burial sites. More and more researchers suspect that these buildings were never burial chambers, but rather had astronomical, energetic, or even ritual functions. At the beginning of the 20th century, the American clairvoyant and mystic Edgar Cayce claimed that beneath the Sphinx lay a hall of records in which knowledge from Atlantis was preserved. His visions inspired numerous researchers, including John Anthony West, who, together with Schoch, attempted to support this theory through geological investigations. Many researchers wanted to search for the chamber, but no one received official permission. Click subscribe now and never miss a new video.